Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Today's video is going to be on ketogenic diets and insulin resistance. We're going to go over the pros and cons of it. We're going to talk about how it may help with insulin resistance and break down some of the physiology. And before we do, smash that like button. Really helps the YouTube algorithm. Put your comments down below. Previous experience with insulin resistance or ketogenic diets. Would love to hear about it. All right, let's dive in. How does a ketogenic diet work? Or even one better, what is a ketogenic diet? So typically, a ketogenic diet is going to be a lower carb, higher fat, moderate protein diet that's going to allow ketone formation. If we break down keto, meaning ketone, genic means to form. So to form ketones. And ketones are fatty acid metabolites. So with a typical fatty acid, we have a glycerol backbone and we have a free fatty acid. So when we go into ketosis, we cleave off the glycerol, that free fatty acid gets shunted down to beta oxidation. From beta oxidation, it's going to go into acetyl-CoA. That goes into the mitochondria or Krebs cycle, and then we spit out various ketones. Now there are three major ketones. We have acetoacetate, that's going to be primarily in your blood. We have acetone, that'll be more breath, that's kind of that fruity smell you see when people go into ketosis. You smell that fruity smell on someone's breath. And then we have beta hydroxybutyrate. These are the big three ketones. Now, if you have like a Keto Mojo, for instance, we'll put the link below for it. I have one of those, they work nice. The acetoacetate's what will be tested in the blood. The acetone is like the breath ketone one you have. That's going to test the acetone. And then the beta hydroxybutyrate will be more in the urine. That'll be like the keto sticks that you pee on. That'll give you indication. So those are the big three ketone sources. And you can see ketogenic diet is where typically getting your carbohydrates usually less than 50 or so. You know, I'd say between definitely less than 50 grams of carbs. Some people less than 20 grams of carbs, depending on how insulin resistant you are. The more insulin resistant, you may only be able to do, 4 or 5 or 6 servings of vegetables a day. That may knock you out, right? The more insulin sensitive you are, you may be able to go higher. Some people that are doing a lot of exercise, they can go even above 100 grams of carbohydrate because they're burning so much of it up. So ketogenic diet, we're starting to spit out ketones for fuel. Glycerol pulled off, free fatty acid, beta oxidation to acetyl-CoA to the various ketones. Now, how is insulin and carbohydrate connected? So this is important because to get into a ketogenic state, we have to, 1, decrease insulin. This is really important, right? When we decrease our insulin levels, we have to restrict carbohydrates. So decrease insulin and decrease carbohydrates are primarily connected because carbs, especially ones that break down to more sugar, so we kind of have our three categories of carbs, right? We have our non-starchy, which are our vegetables. We have our starchy carbs, which are going to be like potatoes, sweet potatoes, etc. We're going to have actually fruit. We'll have low and high glycemic fruit. So berries, green apples, grapefruit, lower, higher, more tropical fruits, banana, pineapple, mango on the higher side. The higher glycemic or the more starchy something is, the more insulin we're going to be spitting out. So low insulin, low carbs. And that's important because when we have low insulin, we also increase things like hormone-sensitive lipase. And we have an increase in lipolytic enzymes. And this is really important because lipolytic enzymes allow us to break down fat. And it's just the opposite. When we increase insulin primarily and increase our carbs, so what's the cause and effect, right? It's the increased carbs is what increases the insulin, and then the increased insulin then increases the opposite, lipogenic enzymes. So the more lipogenic enzymes we have, that means lipo, fat, genic, forming, right? So we're forming more fat when we have more insulin. When we decrease insulin, a result of that is the carbohydrates are decreased, thus the insulin's decreased, and then that helps us to upregulate a lot of these enzymes that burn more fat. Now, it's really important. The big ketogenic mistakes happen with too much protein because we can go through something called gluconeogenesis. So just like we have carbs here with gluconeogenesis, I'll draw it down here. Gluconeogenesis. Gluco, meaning glucose. Neo, forming new glucose. The creation and the forming of new glucose out of protein. So protein can be converted to glucose. Now, if I'm eating a whole bunch of refined sugar versus, let's say someone's having a protein shake, who's gonna make more glucose? The protein shake person or the refined sugar person? Well, no brainer, definitely, you'll always make more glucose out of carbohydrates. Why? Because there's less conversion to get there. You're never gonna be able to convert pure protein to 100% ratio of what you get from actual glucose by itself. So you'll always have much less. But if people who are really insulin resistant, too much protein may kick up their glucose just enough to knock them out. So we want moderate levels of protein, 15 to 20, maybe 25%. And we just want to choose full fat sources. You're going to get in trouble when you do lots of protein powders or things that don't have enough fat connected with it. Ultra lean meats, boneless, skinless chicken breast, veal, venison, those kind of things. If you're choosing full fat meat, or if you're using collagen amino acids, but you're putting coconut milk or MCT oil in there, you're balancing that out enough where that ratio is pretty much intact, okay? And then how can a ketogenic diet go wrong? Like I mentioned, too much protein's a big one. The other one is you don't have enough HCl or enzymes. Now that's important because if you're eating more fats and proteins, well, those things are very expensive to break down in your body. So if you're having a hard time digesting them, there could be HCl issues, enzyme issues, maybe even bile issues. Maybe you don't have a gallbladder. You also may have even a gut infection that could be holding you back as well. Now again, the more you decrease carbohydrate, the more you decrease the amount of insulin, the more your insulin's decrease, the more your cells can be more sensitive to it. So part of how a ketogenic diet works, it improves insulin sensitivity. So now the beta cells of your pancreas say, hey, we can get the job done with less insulin, therefore less insulin gets produced. Why is that helpful? Because when we have less insulin, guess what? We're upregulating the enzymes that help us burn more fat for fuel. So less insulin means we tap into more fat for fuel. And I always tell my patients, burning fat for fuel is like putting logs on a fire. When we put logs on a fire, they burn long and strong, they're stable. When we're relying on lots of carbohydrate and glucose for fuel, it's like twigs and kindling and paper on the fire, maybe even gasoline if we're dealing with alcohol and refined sugar. And it's hard to have a long, strong, sustainable fire with not so great carbohydrate sources. So putting logs on the fire through good fats and proteins, i.e. that convert downstream to good ketones, far more stable, and it takes stress off your pancreas as well as pancreas off your adrenals too, because your adrenals are going to be coming in making cortisol to help buffer out those high and low blood sugar swings. So that's very possible. All right, guys, so if you want to dive in deeper, if you need help with the ketogenic diet or insulin or even thyroid or adrenal issues and you want to dive in deeper with myself, click below, you can schedule a consult. If you enjoy the videos, hit the bell, subscribe, and put your comments down below. Appreciate it. Dr. J signing off. Take care, y'all. Bye.